again with Tshepo Matseba. This is our second live discussion about what's going on in South Africa. Tshepo, there's so much going on. And I'm really happy that when you started last week, you had all these awesome people joining us, taking part in the conversation, adding views, asking questions. And I'm looking forward to more people joining us to enrich these conversations that we're obviously planning to have every week. I've been looking at the media over the weekend, Tshepo. So much going on in South Africa. I see that the premier of Gauteng is gone. I see Ramaphosa has made a lot of money on his farm. I see that municipalities are having trouble around the country, except the DA run Cape Town. They don't have money. I see that there are charges against the Auditor General, some money issues happening there. So much happening in Cebu. What's going on? And the whole thing about money being given to the royalty, especially to the Zulu king, amidst so much poverty in South Africa. But our discussion this morning is going to look at COPE. What's going on with COPE? This party that had so much hope. Now everybody's saying it's no longer coping. And of course, we're also going to talk about the BEE, what to do with BEE. So many years, almost 30 years out of the beginning of this new democracy. There are many voices out there, Tshepo. So do you want to perhaps maybe your introductory remarks and we'll get into this?
Good morning, Solly. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. No, there has been a lot happening in our news calendar over the weekend. If you just look at the sheer complexity of the headlines on the front pages of the weekend papers, South Africa never fails to dish out information. By the way, the discussions with the Office of the Auditor General, I don't think she has been charged, but there are allegations, and they are infighting between herself and some of her staff, and some people are saying that the allegations are made by individuals who are not happy with the fact that she's dealing with corruption openly and directly. But at this stage, we don't know if there are charges that have been opened against her or anyone. But certainly the information we're hearing is that there will be disciplinary actions internally against those who are driving this. My immediate suspicion, this Auditor General has continued where the previous Auditor General left off. And the immediate suspicion I have is that she's probably rattling feathers and in the system. And whenever people do, many good people in South Africa get punished for doing the right thing. And I think she's trying to do the right thing. But we are yet to see. Those are just my views and observations. And then, the issue of Phala Phala will not escape us. There's a headline this morning I saw where President Cyril Ramaphosa says, well, he's actually not indispensable. That he serves at the honor and pleasure of the ANC, and that anybody in the ANC can be removed. And of course, sending a subtle message to detractors that it's game on, and that he's not going to change his strategy around how he responds to the Phala Phala farm matter. We know that the Speaker of Parliament has had to reach out to him now to say he must come back in Parliament legally to come and answer questions. And I think it must be a very uncomfortable position as a Speaker of Parliament to be in, to have to call him back because he was there and he had opportunity to answer, but he did not want to answer. But now he has to go back and answer those questions. But he says, well, I'm not the only one. I serve because of the ANC, and so we're yet to see. But that discussion, that scandal, has been throughout the world. Different media outlets from your BBC in the UK have been taking serious interest on the story, to Al Jazeera, so it is something that's going to sit with us probably for a while, and it makes it difficult when you are a leader of his caliber, number one citizen. When you are facing media and you're facing the public, whenever you do something positive, this thing comes up, and this questions come up, and someone actually asked the question because he was busy doing potholes this weekend. And so there's a journalist asked, but what about that matter? And are you going to respond? And of course he said, well, I'm not indispensable. And so, meaning he's sending us a signal that if the ANC has to remove him from his position, that he would actually just step aside because he doesn't serve by his own choice, but for and through the ANC.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, the ANC in Parliament, the representatives of the ANC, the MPs have defended Zuma in the past. The Chief Justice made the remark recently that if something else were to happen, he cannot trust that ANC MPs would not defend a position of the African National Congress against the position of South Africa or the best interest of South Africa. So it's going to be interesting to see if ANC MPs would really remove Ramaphosa. But we wait to see, right? We wait to see.
No, absolutely. And I agree with you where you say, I doubt that the ANC as a collective will vote against the ANC position. They have always been in that position, but differently this time around. Impeachment is different from a motion of no confidence, because impeachment allows for lengthy conversations to take place. It will be the first time that it happens in South Africa, so we have no precedent. But it's going to serve as a yardstick for future generations, probably in terms of how we deal with issues such as this. I remember the impeachment of Bill Clinton back in the days. So if they judging by that process in the US, if the pattern will be the same, we're going to get to know a lot more than we know today, because an impeachment is completely different from a dialogue or a debate in Parliament.
Yeah, but the Parliament is still hugely dominated by the ANC. But anyway, let's wait and see. There's so much to talk about, Tshepo. We must also at some point talk about the South African army, then SANDF. Now they're complaining that they don't have money, that their facilities are not being taken care of. But these people sent so much. How much have they sent to Cuba? Why do they give so much of our money to Cuba, and then they start crying to say they don't have enough money to do this and that? I mean, there's so much madness and stuff. What is this money doing in Cuba? That's a discussion for another day, I mean, you can't give away some South African money and then start saying, oh, but we're not being allocated sufficient budget to do the things we must do. This is madness. South Africans need to stand up against this nonsense. But anyway, Tshepo, BEE. Let's talk about COPE first, because it's a fascinating discussion. I saw the video clip with Mosiwale Code. Unfortunately, nobody punched him in the face, the poor chap. But he's come so far. He's defended the same. But I see he also said in one of the remarks last week, look, so he also opened the door to a possible departure. He did say, I'm not going to resign in the street. If they want me to resign, let's call a proper meeting, have a discussion, and I will leave properly. So do you see him going within the next few weeks, months?
Yeah. So there are two organizations now in an organization called COPE. There's a faction led by Willie Madisha, and then there's a faction led by Mosiwale Code. Willie Madisha, the deputy president of COPE, and other members of COPE have suspended the president of COPE. And the president of COPE, in turn, suspended the other faction. And so no one knows now which one is this. The brawl you saw had to do with someone who claimed that they were a group of young people who claimed that they were actually leaders of the youth component of COPE, and that this press conference that was taking place was a sort of not sanctioned by COPE, and it was illegal. And so they wanted to participate or sought in a press conference. It was interesting because a journalist actually asked a key question, but why, if you have grievances, why don't you address them within the structures of COPE and not at a media conference? Because a media conference is not an invitation for everybody. It's usually for the media, for a party, or for individuals to address the media on certain issues. And boom, it just went out of hand. It felt like I was in that room, even though I wasn't in the room. In fact, at some point, I thought my television screen was falling because things just moved fairly quickly to a point I actually thought perhaps someone was being assassinated. This this was immediately after Lekota had mentioned that people actually thought he would not make it health-wise because he was not well.
Yeah, he has a cancer of sorts. He's just about the prostate cancer, I think. But
Yeah,
I'm going to quote several two unlikely people. One is Julius Malema. Yes, well, he's not the originator of this, but he's known to have said, look, in politics there are no permanent friends and there are no permanent enemies. That's one. The other one is the late Russian president Boris Yeltsin. He said, you can build a throne with bayonets, but you can't sit on it forever. And this is a message that should go to Madisha. I know that he's been in the party from the beginning. I mean, he probably thinks now it's his turn, and this Lukuta fellow is still sitting there, and he wants to move him over. But if you get into politics like that, we're probably not going to last. Okay, maybe I'm wrong. I'm looking at Africa. There are still presidents in Africa who came into power after killing somebody, after getting somebody killed. Some of them, their uncles and stuff. Do you see Madisha becoming president of COPE soon, or is it going to be another party which is fictionalized, just like the ANC in the middle, and with people on the one side paying allegiance to Lekota, others saying, "Look, we need Madisha."
Look, COPE has been here before with Musiwa Lekota and Mbazima Shilowa, former premier of Gauteng, and eventually Mbazima decided to exit politics to go do other things. But they've been here before, and they, at the time when they were found, they represented an organization that seemed to be fighting for the reinstatement or the respect for former President Thabo Mbeki, at least even though he never openly supported COPE. But as COPE was found, the placards were a reaction to his being recalled by the ANC and replaced by former President Jacob Zuma.
But really, just on that part, you can't tell me that you don't think that Mbeki had a hand in the formation of COPE. Of course he did. No. Of course, he's a smart man. You look, but people who were very, very close, and I've spoken to people who were really close to the process in Polokwane, they said the chief says we're going to start a party. Some people said that, saying, and you must remember that these fellows who started COPE were very, very, very close to Mbeki. There's no way that they could have gone off to start a party without saying, Chief, this is what we're doing, and getting his blessing. All of them. Lekota was chairman of the ANC in Polokwane. He was if you remember, the first 2 days in Polokwane, they were about how the votes were going to be counted. You had all the coalition of the wounded, Malema with the ANC Youth League, you have Zwelinze Mavavi with COSATU, you have Lenzema with the South African Communist Party. All these guys were of the wounded. They wanted change. They wanted their man Zuma in. And there was all sorts of suspicion about how the votes were going to be counted. And Musiwa Lekota, for 2 days, stood there and faced them off, trying to say, guys, come on, this system, you've got to trust, this is how it stays. He was very close to him, Mbazima Shilowa. There's another fellow from the Eastern Cape, I forget his name. All these fellows went off to form COPE. There's no way that Mbeki didn't know about it. But he, of course, he's a smart man. He's never stood up in public to say, okay, I'm supporting this guy. But because he was also upset when he left the ANC, we cannot assume that he never voted for COPE. We don't know that because it's a private thing, but we cannot assume that.
No, absolutely not. Look, he never openly declared whether he was behind COPE or worked with people, but there are people who actually openly spoke about his involvement. One of them includes JJ Tabani.
Yeah.
And JJ mentioned other names in the process. I think he included Trevor Manuel, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
To a point where Trevor threatened legal action against him. And JJ actually stood his ground and said, but we were present, you were part of the exercise. And the reason why I went back to the formation of COPE and why it was found, it was because I wanted to make a point about the significance of COPE when it started. And the wave of publicity that it garnered during that time, the way to influence and move things around. It was the beginning of the splitting of the ANC, if you may use in Afrikaans, biki biki. And you can see
the chips were beginning to fall.
The chips are falling slowly, and there's a number Now there's a couple of parties that come out of the ANC. If you think about it, it was Hope, it is the EFF, and then I think some are saying the African Transformation Movement (ATM) also out of the ANC. I don't have the actual facts, but the essence is, if you look at Lekota at this stage, what this thing is telling us is the refusal by African leaders, black leaders in South Africa, to leave power.
All over the continent, they change constitutions, they kill people, they don't want to go.
Yes, but they refuse to leave, and also the poor understanding of the fact that if we hold on to power forever, the future cannot be secured. So organizations collapse because the bullies who are older, like myself, want to sit on the same positions forever and ever until a spiritual leader comes back. And that's
Tshepo,
the saddest part about it.
Tshepo, you're still a young man. Come on, you're older like myself. What are you talking about? Maybe Donald Trump was African, because he did exactly what these African leaders do. He didn't want to go. This man was prepared to tarnish the democratic image of the United States, because he wanted to be president again. Say, this is what's happening in Africa. The things, I think the problem, Tshepo, is that people form political parties along, which are built for them. Malema or the EFF, it's hard to imagine somebody else leading the EFF, especially because he calls himself the commander-in-chief. I don't know, isn't that a military title? So how do you replace a commander-in-chief? Because commanders-in-chief are not elected people. They're like, I'm the commander-in-chief. So what happens then? The same thing with Mangosuthu Buthelezi. I mean, he stayed there forever until he could not stand there anymore. Now somebody's taking over. I'm sure Lekota will go when, he's now probably opening the discussion about a potential departure. But that is the problem. We build institutions around individuals and not around the values and, that ensure that not individuals are not indispensable. And that's a problem. I think we need to move away from it. In South Africa, we also need to move away from the idea that a man, a woman will come and save us. South Africans must save themselves. How do you make sure that the institutions, whether at party level, at country level, are so robust that they can withstand the departure of anybody, irrespective? Lekota is facing the same thing, maybe.
Yeah, look, it's an irony, isn't it, that actually when you look at an organization like Hope, you would think that they are, perhaps it talks about the value of brands. You'd think that there are resources to fight for, but Cope actually has no resources. They've got very limited seats in parliament. So you wonder what is the battle all about. But it tells you the following: that if you look at the National Assembly and look at the age group of people who are sitting in the National Assembly, it's 60 plus to 70 to almost 80. And you have a whole generation of young people, 66% of young people who are unemployed in the country. And then you say, who's going to take the country forward after the 70-year-olds are gone? Who's going to lead those political parties when the 70-year-olds are gone? And the 70-year-olds refuse to go. We don't have the culture of succession planning like we had under when we had the likes of former President Nelson Mandela. If you look at, for example, leaders like Tony Leon from the Democratic Alliance, Tony managed to leave the position when the time came for him to leave. But others may say differently that, you look at people like Helen Zille, perhaps they are refusing to go by coming back to save a party. Someone may say you are refusing to go, and then you look at the EFF. Interesting, Julius Malema, Floyd Shivambu, and Dr. Ndlozi. Malema is not going to leave. It's hard to imagine the EFF without Julius Malema, because people are following Malema and not necessarily the party as itself. But as a party, they'll argue with me vehemently for saying this type of thing. And then when you look at the ANC, go look at the NEC and the age group, with the exception of Balula and who's also growing now, like Balula and Ronald Lamola. Most the leaders in the ANC are very, very old. Most leaders in the ANC who stand a chance of actually leading the ANC as president and ultimately, or the top six, are very old people. And this is the problem with us, is that we don't create the space in South Africa for succession, for leadership succession. We want to rule until forever and ever, until infinity. And it's impossible. And that's why these political parties will not survive over a period of time.
But wait a minute. I mean, Helen Zille, the members of the DA voted her into the federal chair. I think that's what that's the position she's holding. But the leader of the DA is a young fellow called John Steenhuisen. Surely you can't compare her to all these other people. I mean,
no,
the members had a choice to say, look, you've served your time, please go away. But they voted her. Nobody said it was a rigged election.
That's precisely the problem, is that she was gone and she came back. Right. And she actually made wave, and we can debate it for hours, but she made wave for the exodus of black leaders from the DA. Some people may argue, and I may argue, that her return to the DA at that level created a lot of problems for the Democrats.
In that way, do you think she's racist?
I don't think, I can't verify racism or not, but she has certainly made very unpopular remarks when it comes to, for example, issues such as black leadership. She referred to someone, and I think Musi took offense. I think at some point he was referred to almost like a token. She said she made remarks like around having.
It's Tony Leon who spoke about Musi as a failed experience. But I once attended an event in Cape Town hosted by the Nelson Mandela Foundation. Musi Maimane was there. It was around the time when, soon after Helen Zille had made that remark, apparently she was flying back from Singapore or something like that, and she said, but these guys also went through colonialism, look at how successful, and it was interpreted in the way it was in South Africa. Anyway, I asked Musi Maimane, Musi, is she racist? And with just me and him sitting aside, I just got a little moment with him. I said, is she racist? And you know what he said to me? He said, no, I don't think so. But what do you want me to do? I have never met, no, but this is serious. I have never met a single black leader who left the DA and who said Helen Zille is racist. I think South Africa would like Helen Zille to be racist, but she's not. She's a straight talker. She says things that people don't want to hear. I have not show me one person who's worked with her and who says that woman is really racist. It's not true. South Africans would love her to be racist, but she's not. She just says she's a very opinionated white woman, and South Africa can't stand opinionated white women. That's the truth about Helen Zille.
Look, I mean, I'm not here to attack or defend Helen Zille, but she's certainly in the world of work that I do. We talk about perceptions and the fact that perceptions actually do drive markets. And the perceptions that she has created with some of her remarks, I never said all remarks, but some of her remarks have created issues of imagined racism, perhaps, that people actually think that she's more pro-white than, and maybe even anti-black. But those are perceptions. But unfortunately, perceptions do drive markets. Is she a great leader? Does the DA need her? I certainly think that the DA needed her before, and I think in her first term, when she was leader of the DA, she did incredible work. I think her return was a mistake. I think she could have. They could have placed somebody else there, and she could have played an advisory role behind the scenes.
But I mean, people look. If you look at her, if you look at her record as leader, as premier of the Western Cape, it was successful. She's also, if there's anything I'd like her for, is because it's when she said no more blue light brigades here in Cape Town. We don't have those. I mean, each time I come to Johannesburg, dude, the highway between Johannesburg and Pretoria, every little person who becomes an MEC wants to be surrounded by 8 cars with blue lights when they travel from beach. It's nonsense. You don't see that in Cape Town. In Cape Town, I've met the Premier, Alan Winde, in a little restaurant, with his family having coffee. I've seen him walking a dog. I've seen him. I was like, you don't need that stuff. But it's this, black leaders think you're a big person, therefore you need 30 bodyguards and lots of cars. Helen Zille says, no, nonsense. Only the president gets that, of course, the head of state gets it when it comes to Cape Town. Nobody else. You don't see an MEC in the Western Cape running around with Brooklyn, and you see you can live without them. So I'm really happy that she got rid of that stuff. Okay, and I think that you should meet her one day. I've met her. I think she's a very fascinating woman. The thing is, I look, perceptions, of course, do all of the stuff that you described, but the thing is, perceptions are not always correct. I mean, the DA it's famous to say the DA, and I'm not defending, but I'm talking. It's important that it's a position that people like to say the DA is racist, but the DA, talk to this guy, talk to Steenhuisen. But when you repeat a lie over and over again, it doesn't become truth.
Yeah, look, perceptions are not facts. That's clear. And I actually was talking about Steenhuisen. I mean, Steenhuisen defended those posters in KwaZulu-Natal, in Phoenix, that were terrible.
Yeah, it was terrible. But he apologized. It was terrible. I totally agree.
And then of course, on a more where I didn't find something, I didn't find this specific action offensive, but other people did. Steenhuisen took an interview on a podcast with McG here in South Africa, and in that interview, in the context of that interview, he made a joke about his ex.
And that's terrible.
He linked that to a very bad word.
That was bad.
But when you read the definition of that word, it has 2 or 3 different meanings. But let's focus only on the 2. And we can go to that word. It says roadkill. The first one is about a literal roadkill. But the second definition, Merriam-Webster, actually was going more in the lines of someone who lost in a competitive match.
No.
In a highly competitive.
Either way, when you speak like that about your wife, your ex-wife, it's not cool.
And I know we just come out of Women's Month, but when you look at the context of what he was saying and the nature of the show, I think people blew things way out of proportion. I think South Africans sometimes we are overly sensitive. Actually, John has a great sense of humor. And I found that conversation to be when you look at, because often we make remarks about one line, but we don't watch the entire. But if you watch the entire show, you'll see that actually that's the nature and the mood of the conversation. So I didn't find it offensive.
That's interesting.
At all. And I find him to provide different insights and pressure. Look, we must also commend them in the Western Cape. I must say, as municipal wise, things are doing really well.
I mean, look, they're not perfect. But they're doing a lot better than elsewhere in the country. There's a lot of improvement. I mean, look, my home is in Cape Town, and my neighbors, I'm on my WhatsApp group with my neighbors. The people are afraid to walk the streets. Over the past 2 years of COVID lockdown, homeless people have grown. Of course, poverty, the economy is bad, but also petty criminality. People get robbed in the street. You can't take a walk. You can't take a ride on a bike. It's happened to me. And they need to do more. Obviously, there's a whole discussion about what the municipality is allowed to do in terms of policing, because we know that the policing, SAPS is controlled by the Bekitele. National, but the municipality, I think, still needs to do a lot more to protect the citizens, people who pay rates and taxes. So they're not perfect, but it's true that in terms of managing the affairs of the public, they are doing a lot better job, a far better job than all ANC municipalities combined.
Yeah, look, and before we talk about BEE, while we go towards BEE discussion, there is a narrative that you see in the Western Cape by blacks and coloreds, people of color, and most of the poor, that the Democratic Alliance government or the government of the Western Cape does not care about the poor, that where they still live, while the economy of the Western Cape is actually a very decent economy. But the poor live in extremely poor conditions.
But Tshepo, you need to contextualize these things. There are many people who stream into the Western Cape from the Eastern Cape, running away from the ANC. They stream they come there, they demand homes. Some of them have homes already in the Eastern Cape. They come to the Western Cape. And there are also people in the townships in Cape Town who when you send ambulances or municipal workers, they attack them. So you need to talk about these things as well, because it's easy to portray blacks, poor blacks, as victim, but sometimes some of our problems we create our own problem. How do you attack people who are coming to fix the street? How do you attack people who are coming to switch off a fire? How do you attack an ambulance that's coming over into a township to save lives? So you know what I'm saying? So the city tries, but then people get pushed out. It's almost like they want the DA to fail so that they can continue the narrative that the DA is not doing anything in the township, which is not true.
Look, I'm with you there, but we must also appreciate. I understand the migration from Eastern Cape into Western Cape and other areas, but also note issues that are happening in the Cape Flats. And the extent
of course, violence, gangsterism,
and poverty, and the extent to which government is watching that area and not doing sufficient work in that area. I think that is saddening. There are other areas of failed governance when you go and look at Tswana. And the really disasters that you see in places like Amaskral, where the provision of water has not happened in the last 16 years of clean water. So I think we make valid points. I must say I admire the quality of governance that has happened in the Western Cape.
Okay, I see some remarks from the from our audience out there. Please do share them again. So we get lost into this discussion. Maybe Brown can help us also with some of these remarks, so we respond to the questions as we go along. Tshepo, before we move to B, let's on COPE, just a little bit of a remark there. COPE, in the bigger scheme of things, means doesn't change. I mean, you almost touched on it a little bit, right? I mean, if COPE disappears tomorrow, so what? Is it going to change anything in South Africa?
No. The COPE is now an insignificant brand. That's all that's left. They've got a beautiful logo, beautiful colors, but that party will not be around for too long. And even if you try to resuscitate it, it has had so much turmoil that there's no value anymore. In fact, even parties like the PAC are starting to pick up momentum compared to COPE. And I would actually say that before it dies, COPE should actually approach an alternative party and join forces with them and say, let's have a decent closure, just like we had a closure of the National Party that went and I think they made a relationship with the African.
Whom do you recommend they go to?
We're talking about COPE.
COPE, yeah.
At this stage, they can go anywhere. They should go back home to the ANC, where they come from.
Oh God, Tshepo.
I don't think they are wanted at the DA. I doubt that they'll be wanted at the EFF. I doubt very much, because they don't have. Remember, in politics you need constituency, so they don't have influence. They don't have constituency. But if I were Willie Madisha, he still has credibility as a leader.
He does.
I think he's got some credibility. Okay. He also has a great sense of humor. He's the one who gave the minister of DECO.
I remember. Okay. Let's move on. Tshepo, we have. I mean, B is in a basket of race-based policies that were introduced at the beginning of our new democracy. Of course, there was reason for that, given the past, discriminatory nature of apartheid and how Black people were suppressed over these, denied opportunities in business, in jobs, etc., in education. But now, 28 years later, do you think we should have agreed on sunset clauses also? Like, we should also have come up with at the beginning, what are the key milestones? How do we make sure that BEE or affirmative action, all these policies are making progress? They're having the impact that they have. Because every day, every year, Black children are born, and Black people will always be the majority in South Africa, and white people are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. When I'm saying Black people, colored people, Indian people, of course, but the Black is the majority, right? When a child who was born, say, 20 years ago, who happens to be white, and we don't even know whether he comes from a wealthy family or not, supported by family, or we don't know that this child comes out of university, starts a business. They were born way after apartheid ended. We still require them to find a solely as a BE partner. I think that's nonsense. Surely, are we going to do this forever? Is there time to have a conversation about reforming BEE or doing it altogether? And to my last remark on this, Tshepo, if you had a policy, that's my view, of course. If you have a policy in South Africa that says we're going to have a system that takes care of every South African child, irrespective of what they look like, okay? Most people who benefit would be Black anyway, because the sheer number of Black people in South Africa. So do you still need to discriminate against white South African children? So empower the nation. Let every South African child who has an opportunity to create jobs, a business, come up with ideas, innovation, give them the support. And as they grow, they will take others with them. Why do we need race-based policies in 2022?
Yeah, look, there are BE is a difficult one. There are some successes of BE where it has enabled us as a country to address persistent imbalances in the economy. But it has also created some limited, rich Black folk who are not sharing in that wealth. So I think I wanted to make that point right from the outset so that there's no misunderstanding. And I don't think I don't think BEE should be about. It certainly, definitely needs to be reformed so that it creates space for genuine transformation. You can call it what you want to call it, but transformation needs to happen. When you look at the JSE Top 100 and look at the leadership of those organizations, middle management and upwards, the numbers will tell you what it looks like. They will tell you that at the top, it's male and white predominant. And I want to.
Why do you think that's the case?
I want to make a very clear distinction between. I will get there. I want to make a clear distinction between Black economic empowerment and employment equity. A lot of people often confuse the two, and then we have a longer discussion. So if we focus only on BEE, the reason why at the top of the echelons of these listed companies or corporates in South Africa, in the private sector, is that you have the same groups of people that went to school together, hiring the same groups of people who look like them, and they continue and they perpetuate. For example,
you're talking about white people. This show must call it white people.
Yes, so I may come with 17 years to 18 years experience, same qualification, with another chap next to me who has less experience. But he comes from the University of Stellenbosch. I'll just make frankly, or he comes from Wits, and it doesn't matter whether he's Afrikaans or Jewish. But you'll see that a lot of appointments are made along those lines, and they're made consistently. And I'm not talking about family businesses. I'm talking about listed entities. I'm talking about major corporates, and that pattern you see continuing in South Africa. There are some successes of young Black people. I mean, I've had an opportunity. I was fortunate to work for some of the corporates in South Africa. But what you see when you are in South Africa's corporates, transformation happens at a very, very snail pace. And therefore, you need some type of a system to change the structure of ownership. Is BEE in its current form the right structure? Most probably not. But you do need some type of structure to redress the imbalances. Go to SMMEs and say you look at procurement and who is getting access to business opportunities. It is not people. It's not fulfilling what it's intended to do. In fact, you are going to find Tshepo van der Merwe and Deloitte who are actually getting the bigger business.
Why is that the case?
Because the conditions are strange. For example, or when you go to bid, some of the conditions will talk about infrastructure that you don't have. They will talk about resources, capital in advance that you don't have. So you may be the right skill set for a construction project, but you don't have the capital to fund it. And you don't have the what do you call it, the financial instruments to what's the thing that they use in banking, where you are required.
Capital. You mean capital or
Besides capital, you need
collateral?
property.
Collateral.
Collateral. That's the word I was looking for.
Right.
So because of our history,
Mm-hmm.
you find that most blacks, young entrepreneurs or midweight, they don't have access to capital and collateral, and therefore business goes to the same environment. So BEE simply creates a continuation. It either creates a pool of business that goes in the one direction, white business, or it goes and funds a few elites, black elites now, who they will now go.
Who can pick up the phone and call so and so who's powerful in government?
Yes. And then they'll exploit that situation, and so therefore it's not achieving its intended objectives. We know that there's a discussion about preferential procurement as a system, and whether it is functional, and there are some legal developments happening in that space. Is BEE a yardstick that we should use to try and transform the economy in its current form? Most probably not. Now going back to your question about if Tshepo, assume Tshepo is white now. If Tshepo starts a business as a young white male, must Tshepo now go and find
Sorry, I'm black. I'll be the black, you'll be the white.
The guy to come in into his business so that he can get access to business opportunities? Not necessarily. That's not what preferential procurement says, and certainly.
But they do look at ownership.
At the ownership level, but certainly that's not what it says. And certainly the opportunity is that when you look at BEE and its intended, micro enterprises are exempted from most of these things that we're talking about. It is when,
but in practice, people do sometimes discriminate against firms because they are not owned by black people.
Yeah, but it's importantly, small and medium enterprises in majority that are white owned in South Africa in different industries do far well because they've got access to capital and they can manipulate this BEE system into their own advantage than the black owned SMMEs. It's just a fact, and it's not a function of skill only. It's about access to resources. Where we have failed, I think, as a country, is we fail at the education system. Because if we fix the education system, we will bring everybody on par.
Let me read this question. Tshepo, is there perhaps benefits in coalitions such as transparency and oversight of abuse of power from the joking atheist?
Is there a benefit from coalitions such as transparency and oversight of abuse of power? So I guess he's trying to say, I understand the question to say, is there opportunity for coalitions, and will coalitions enable us to have more oversight over abuse of power? I certainly think the coalitions are the future, actually, because you minimize hegemony. At the moment, when you have somebody at over 50%, anything with one party over 50% is a problem. It's going to be a problem. It's unsustainable. But unfortunately, South Africans don't go to vote. They don't participate. And the lack of participation is actually participation in that.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. I want to add an element to the previous discussion about the discussion about BEE. Of course, I want to add an element of the colored factor, or maybe the Indian factor. I have heard many South African colored, people who are called colored. Not everybody wants to be colored who looks like a colored. I've seen people say, don't call me that, it's an apartheid term, but that's not the discussion. I know people who say, you people tend to talk about blacks and whites. We are not black. Why are we excluded? And there are some people even go to the extent of saying colored people in a place like the Western Cape are dominant. They should be. So we should, when you talk about figures, numbers, percentages of employment, they should remain at the top preferential position for employment, equity, for business, because the Western Cape belongs to them. Some people believe that. some people are so angry now. They're saying, well, if we don't get our way, we're going to exit South Africa. Of course, I don't think that's going to happen. So do you think BEE, as we know, it discriminates against colored people?
No. BE does not discriminate against colored people. Unfortunately, there it would be simplistic to go in that route, because colored people are classified specifically as black in terms of black economic empowerment.
But so those who complain, are they just talking nonsense?
No. So I want to go there. So the problem that we've created in South Africa is that we have not created a space for inclusive language. There shouldn't be a distinction, honestly speaking, between colored, black, and Indian in terms of redressing the injustices of the past, because we've all gone through the same difficulty. And I think that government in particular and our leaders have been insensitive to the cause of colored people in South Africa.
But
in the sense that when we don't hear enough leaders who stand up for colored people, and when they speak out, we kind of say, yeah, it's look, by the way, and I think it's been irresponsible of our leaders not to take the plight of colored people and put it at the forefront of an agenda deliberately in the narrative, so that we can change the psyche of our people in terms of employment opportunities, in terms of business opportunities, and generally in terms of how we treat color.
So are you saying I'm very fascinated by you mentioning inclusive language. So this inclusive language should exclude young white South Africans? So you're saying we should put all the colors and Indians in the same basket against white people? Are you saying? I still struggle with the idea that I have taught at UCT, for instance, and I've encountered lots of young white South Africans who really love South Africa. And they're continuously being made to pay because we make assumptions that you're white, you must have money. You're white, your parents must have money. You're white, you must have someone who's white who's supposed to. But there are people, young white South Africans who are white, who are struggling. Many have left the country because they say, we can't make it anymore. Surely, Tshepo, we need to get to a point where we have South Africans, irrespective of what they look like, and then support South Africans. And like I said earlier, if we have a structure that supports all South Africans with opportunity, with potential, most beneficiaries are going to be black.
Let me give you a different perspective.
Can you read this first? And then he says they should do away with racial element of BEE and just rather have economic empowerment. This is what I'm saying. This would be inclusive of anyone who is at the economic disadvantage. I totally agree with that. What's your view?
I think he's spot on in the sense that inclusive language is crucial. Remember one thing that we should always remind ourselves about. Addressing a systemic problem means that at some point you need to talk about the holistic troubles that we're facing, because you are dealing with a systemic issue. And it can't be that when you deal with a system, you isolate individuals to say, but Tshepo earns 4 rands and the other one earns 40,000 rands. That's the issue about the systemic issues.
Well, but you can't discuss macroeconomics without discussing microeconomics.
Yes. And I totally agree. But here's a different perspective. Right now, my son is 18. And when he goes into a job environment that's against other fellow Africans or whites, but mainly African females, he says to me, I feel discriminated against because preference is given to female, disabled, or sometimes even words like military veterans are mentioned. But is it a negative discrimination? Absolutely not. To say we are going to prioritize gender in order to redress the imbalances. But does that mean he must leave the country and he must feel left out? Absolutely not. So I think we must create a space for inclusive language where white or black, and I must say white people that I see and that are experienced, and we need to look at the ecosystem. But for now, let's just talk a conversation. Well, I don't see white people struggling with job opportunities in South Africa or business opportunities in South Africa.
I have seen white people struggle. I have seen white people struggle.
Yeah, of course. I mean, they are poor white people. We agree. But at the systemic level, I don't see that as a major struggle. And the opportunities are there in this country, and a lot of young white people are contributing either in their own business.
A lot of left, come on, a lot of left, a lot.
Of course, there's
a lot are planning to leave.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you.
Tshepo, empathy means you must understand the pain of the littlest person in the room. And usually the majority is not always right. Well, it's easy to say, but most people are happy, therefore you are just an individual. We can just pretend you're not there. But actually, if you really want to understand the pain of a nation, sometimes you need to be able to understand the pain of an individual.
Yeah, I think we must be sympathetic and empathetic to actually every single one. That's why I talk about inclusive narrative and inclusive language, so that there's a space for everyone. Having an inclusive dialogue doesn't mean, and inclusive priorities doesn't mean that we don't recognize the imbalances that we have in the country and the impact of what the past has done and contributed to where we are today. And that's why policy it's just that, do we have the right policies and the right people in terms of Black economic empowerment or inclusive transformation? Maybe we don't have the right policies at this stage. Maybe some of the policies need to be adjusted, but something needs to be done, certainly.
But Tshepo, all the problems faced by South Africa, including the systemic ones that you're talking about, are not due to the past. We are in our 28th year of democracy in South Africa. Lots of resources. We need money to change things. We need money to improve townships, to creches, to create laboratories and libraries. And you need money to fund students from poor areas who have the opportunity, who want to study further, etc., etc. But a lot of that money has been stolen. It wasn't stolen by apartheid. It was stolen by people who are running South Africa today. We used to have a SARS that was able to collect the resources that government needed to fund all of these programs. Now SARS is trying to stand up again. It was brought down to its knees, not by apartheid, not by white people, by Black people, Tshepo. We can't constantly be blaming apartheid for everything that's facing South Africa today in 2022. It's an incomplete conversation to constantly be harping on apartheid. I'm not saying apartheid, of course, it left some lasting issues, but we've had lots of missed opportunities over the past 28 years because money was stolen, Tshepo. That could have improved so much for our people.
And undoubtedly, there are disasters and catastrophes of economic hijack and economic theft that took place in the last 28 years under democracy, under a Black government, and so on. That's there's no doubt. I don't think anyone can contest that. The point I was making is, broadly speaking, if you, for example, go into issues of land ownership, you can't ignore the effects of an orchestrated, legalized policy framework that created space for others to benefit while others live in the bush without any access to economic ownership, to own any assets. And so I think what you are on point, but the problem is we don't seem to have leaders who are willing to take up this type of discussions and deal with them properly. We are grateful that there's some some progress, it looks like, with regards to state capture, because the right message is being sent, people are being arrested, there's something happening, there's a wave.
No, Zuma has not been arrested. Zuma has not been arrested. He's a kingpin.
Can we sustain the efforts that we're seeing now under Batoyi at the NPA? Even though it took a long time, for us to see action, but we're starting to see action. Can we sustain it?
No, she must know. But Toy is a politician. I'm sorry. She keeps harping on about going to get the Guptas back to face South Africa, justice in South Africa. The Gupta brothers had a business partner. His name is Duduzane Zuma. He's still running around. He's even now telling people that he's going to be the next president. If they want to arrest the Guptas, they mustn't arrest them for their name because they are called Guptas. They must be arrested for the things they did. And the things they did had an accomplice. His name is Duduzane Zuma. Then she must show us. She must say, I'm getting this man and I'm going to get his partners who happen to be called the Guptas. Okay, you mustn't be fooled by this. No, the Patohi is useless. She must go. We need to find somebody who's not appointed, I don't know. We need to find somebody else. She should have started long. She's making excuses all the time. Each time she takes to the podium, she speaks like a politician making promises, Tshepo.
Yeah, look, unfortunately, when you appoint politicians on roles, we discussed politicians before, and that's what you get. Politicians are politicians. Are we going to get the right level of the speed of convictions? It's a different story. Some, not just you, I think Malema and many other people have asked, why is Duduzane not arrested? But similarly, others may say, but why are you not arrested for VBS? And why is Marcus Jooste not arrested for issues at Steinhoff, and so on and so on? And so we are at the mercy of politicians, and that's why it's important for us as citizens to start to take our lives and our country seriously by actively participating. And one way of participating is to figure out whether we support these individuals who are like Musi's one movement and others to try and create these coalitions that one of our colleagues here is talking about. Because without these coalitions or multi-party, true multi-party state, we are going to be trouble indeed.
Yeah, Tshepo, we're going to finish our conversation now, but I would like you to just crisply, what would you change about BEE if you were to be given an opportunity? I mean, you said it needs to be reformed. As somebody said, okay, let's take the racial element out of it. You agree. But if you were to say, okay, I mean, you clearly made an argument that we need it, but what would you change?
Yeah, there are a lot of critical milestones within the BEE Act and the system that needs to be changed. But some of the immediate opportunities that may need to change, specifically around BEE, to eliminate specific permanent individuals gaining from the same system forever, is to open up a space for newer people to come into the business fraternity without giving business to the same old corporates. So there must be an end. If I'm a black owned entity and I've earned X amount of millions from the state, at some point I must compete on par with the rest, and I must no longer qualify for BEE. So you need to cap. There must be a cap at some point, so that you stop the millionaires from becoming billionaires abusing the system. You cap. There must be a cap. And at the moment, the problem is that it's a free for all, and it's an endless pit. It's a black hole.
Yeah, the joking artist is asking us again, okay, let's play a thought experiment. In 2024, if it's 2024 and the ANC has lost power, what now? Where do we start? What does the road to a better South Africa look like? I have an answer. I'll let you give yours. My answer is that we don't start in 2024, Mr. Atheist. We start today. South Africans must agree how to coalesce. Tshepo mentioned some of these people. They must come together and propose a different South Africa ahead of the 2024 elections, not after the elections. That's my view. Because usually what happens is people go to elections and after that they start comparing notes. Okay, what did you get? How did you get? Okay, what position are you going to get? They start playing, sharing notes and agreeing on what they're going to do, not do on the basis of it. They should say no. So there are a lot of South Africans who don't vote. We need to get them to vote on the promises, on the basis of a compelling promise, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say we wait for 2024. I think we must participate, and active participation means that you start where you are, and then you participate in the dialogue like we are doing right now in discussions. But most you call out the bad things for what they are, call out corruption for what it is, and importantly, to find or create a political home and participate in South Africa's electoral system. Avoiding participation simply means that we will be here 10 years from now and 10 years beyond towards infinity. We need to participate, and we need to encourage more younger people to participate because they come with a different view and different experience. They don't have as much legacy as some of us have.
Right. Tshepo, 30 seconds, your concluding remarks.
Yeah, we live in a fascinating country with turmoil, good, the bad, and the ugly. But there are still opportunities. We can be optimistic and we can play a role. So I think we should all play our part.
Okay, thank you very much. Tshepo, it's so awesome. It's always been so awesome to talk to you, and thank you to our audience members out there. Joking, Athais was here with us last week. He's here with us today. Others have seen all the remarks coming through the screen. I am sorry that we have not responded to each one of them, but we have seen them, and we'll take them into account as we plan our future discussions. We're doing this currently every Monday morning from 9:30 to 10:30. We're looking at the possibilities of moving it to an evening time so that we have more people, say around 6 p.m. We might start next week, but please stay with us, give us your feedback, and as we continue this conversation, we don't just want to talk, we want to be real, to be direct. We call things what they are. We don't say some people, we say white people or black people or Indian people or colored people. Because if you don't call, if you keep misdiagnosing a problem, you keep applying the wrong solution to it. So this is the frank talk that we have with Tshepo, my good friend, and we'll see you again next week. Solimwe Tshepo Matseba at WorldView. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Okay, are you there, my friend, Donald?